Hi, everyone, and welcome to English Listen and Learn. I'm Ben.
And I'm Anna. We're really excited to spend some time with you today.
That's right, Anna. And what we're focusing on in our conversation today is something I think you'll find both enjoyable and incredibly useful. Using movies to really level up your English.
Absolutely, Ben. Think of this as your personal guide to unlocking a powerful English learning tool that you probably already have access to, yeah, your favorite films.
hmm
Our aim today is to show you precisely how movies can become your allies in improving your speaking and listening skills, expanding your vocabulary, and even, gaining a deeper understanding of English-speaking cultures.
Exactly. So our goal together is to explore why movies are such surprisingly effective teachers of English.
Right.
And maybe more importantly, we're going to share some really practical step-by-step tips that you can start using, well, right away to make the most of your movie watching for language learning. Sound good?
It does. So maybe let's kick things off by looking at why movies are actually so beneficial when you're learning English. What makes them stand out, really?
Well, I think one of the first things that makes movies so valuable is the kind of English you're exposed to.
Okay.
If you think about traditional language learning materials, they often present a very formal, maybe almost artificial way of speaking.
That's such a great point, Ben. It's like the difference between a perfectly scripted dialogue in a textbook and how people actually, chat in real life.
Right.
While those formal dialogues are grammatically correct, sure, they don't often reflect everyday conversations with all their little nuances and imperfections.
Exactly. Movies, on the other hand, they give you that real, authentic language. You hear people using phrases like, "what's up?" or maybe "see you later."
Common stuff.
Yeah, and you're exposed to contractions like "I'll" and even slang that just pops up naturally in conversation. It gives you a true feel for how people communicate.
And that's just so important because language isn't only about knowing grammar rules and like memorizing vocabulary lists.
Definitely not.
It's about understanding how people use language in context to express themselves. Take a movie like Love Actually, for example.
Oh, yeah.
When Hugh Grant's character sort of stumbles over his words trying to talk to Natalie, you hear all those little hesitations and informal phrases that make it sound so incredibly real.
hmm
That's the kind of natural English you might not find easily in a textbook.
Absolutely. It's like getting a backstage pass to real English conversations. And here's something that's maybe often overlooked. Movies provide so much more information than just the spoken words. You know, think about what you see on the screen.
Oh, that's a really key aspect, Ben. The visual context in movies can be incredibly helpful for understanding the language.
How so?
Well, if you encounter a new word or phrase, often the actor's facial expressions, maybe their body language, and just the situation they're in will give you a really strong clue about the meaning.
Okay.
You see the emotions being expressed, and that helps your brain connect the language to the context in a very intuitive way. It just clicks sometimes.
It's almost like learning your first language as a kid, isn't it? Where you pick up so much meaning just from gestures and your surroundings.
Exactly.
Think about a movie like Paddington. When Paddington looks confused, even if he says something you don't fully understand at first, his expression and the whole situation usually make his meaning pretty clear.
Perfectly put. Exactly. And let's not forget a really crucial element here, enjoyment.
Ah, yes.
The fun part.
The fun part, learning a new language can sometimes feel like a bit of a chore, maybe a challenge.
It can.
But watching movies is something most people genuinely find fun and relaxing. And when you're actually enjoying yourself, your brain is simply more open, more receptive to absorbing new information.
I completely agree, Anna. When learning feels like a pleasure rather than, a task, you're just much more likely to stay engaged and motivated.
And that naturally leads to better learning outcomes, faster progress. So, okay, we know why movies are such a great resource. Now, let's talk about how you can really use them effectively in your English learning journey. We have 3 really practical tips for you.
Okay, so our first tip revolves around something you've probably used before, subtitles.
Right?
Now, you've likely watched movies with subtitles, but how you use them can make a massive difference. We suggest starting by watching movies in English with English subtitles turned on.
That's right. The whole idea here is to create a solid connection between the spoken words you're hearing and the written form you're seeing.
Okay.
By seeing the English words on the screens as you hear them, you start to understand the spelling, how words sound together in sentences, and you can link that spoken language directly to its meaning.
And this can be a fantastic way to improve your pronunciation too, actually.
Okay.
Well, You see the word written down, and you simultaneously hear how it's actually pronounced by a native speaker in context. Then, as you become more comfortable, the next logical step is to challenge yourself.
Okay.
Try turning those subtitles off completely and see how much you can understand just by listening.
It's like gradually increasing the difficulty setting as you improve.
Exactly, like levels in a game.
And when you're using those English subtitles, maybe try focusing on short scenes with really clear dialogue to begin with. For example, in a movie like Toy Story, the characters often speak quite clearly.
Good example.
Seeing a word like adventure on the screen while Buzz Lightyear says it with all his confidence, that helps solidify that word in your mind.
That's a perfect example of how subtitles can really help with vocabulary acquisition and pronunciation.
Yeah.
But here's a really, really important point to keep in mind.
Okay, what's that?
Try to avoid using subtitles in your native language.
Ah, right. That's tempting, though.
It is tempting, and it might feel easier initially, but it can actually distract you from the English audio. It kind of hinders your overall immersion in the language.
Makes sense. Your brain defaults to what's easiest.
Exactly. Your brain will naturally focus on what's familiar, the language you already know, and you'll miss out on valuable opportunities to actively listen and really try to understand the English being spoken.
Absolutely. It's like trying to read two different books at the same time. It's just not the most effective way to learn, is it?
Not at all.
Okay, so that's subtitles. Our second tip is a technique called shadowing. Now, it might sound a little unusual at first,
It does sound a bit strange, maybe.
but it's a really powerful way to improve your spoken English.
So what is shadowing exactly? Well, it essentially involves listening to a line of dialogue from the movie, pausing it right after,
Okay.
and then immediately repeating that line yourself, trying to get as close as you can to how the actor actually said it.
So you're mimicking them.
Pretty much. You're trying to imitate their pronunciation, their intonation, the rise and fall of their voice, and even the rhythm and pacing of their speech. It's like becoming their echo or their shadow.
Hence the name. And the benefits are, well, pretty significant. It really helps you refine your pronunciation because you're actively trying to reproduce those specific sounds.
Actively doing it.
It also helps train the muscles in your mouth, your tongue, your lips, to form English words more naturally and fluently over time.
Yeah.
Plus, it's a fantastic way to boost your confidence in actually speaking out loud.
Exactly. Think about a memorable line from a movie you enjoy. Maybe it's something iconic like, "May the Force be with you" from Star Wars.
Classic.
Try saying it with the same emphasis, the same sort of serious feeling as the character. It might feel a little silly at first, maybe.
Probably will.
But practicing this for even a short period each day, say just 5 to 10 minutes, can make a really noticeable difference in how you speak English. It's like a vocal workout specifically for your English.
It really is. Okay, subtitles, shadowing. And our third tip is to create your own movie English notebook.
Ooh, I like this one.
Yeah. Think of it as a personal collection, like a scrapbook,
Yeah.
of all the new and interesting English you discover while watching films.
Movies are just packed full of useful vocabulary, common expressions, idioms, natural ways of phrasing things.
Totally.
By actively writing these down, you're engaging with the language in a much more active way than just hearing it. And that process really helps you remember them better.
So what should you actually put in this notebook?
Mm.
Well, definitely jot down any new words or phrases that you hear and aren't familiar with. That's the starting point.
Right.
Then take a moment, maybe pause the movie or do it afterwards, look up their meaning, and write down a simple example sentence that shows how that word or phrase is used in context.
And importantly, make a note of the movie title and maybe the specific scene or situation where you heard it.
Why has that been important?
Because that context, remembering the scene, the characters, the emotion, it will really help you recall the meaning of the word or phrase later on. It anchors it in your memory.
Gotcha. So like an example.
Okay, sure. For instance, you might be watching, say, The Devil Wears Prada, and hear characters say, "That's chic."
Okay.
In your notebook, you could write down the word chic. It's meaning maybe something like fashionably elegant or stylish, the movie title, and perhaps a brief description of the scene, like talking about an outfit.
Right.
Then, crucially, you could create your own sentence using it, like, "Her new dress is very chic." Or maybe, "I love that chic cafe downtown."
Nice. And don't be afraid to personalize your notebook. Use different colored pens if that helps.
Or draw little pictures. Yeah.
Draw little pictures related to the scenes, or even create categories like slang, phrasal verbs, useful adjectives. The more engaging you make it for yourself, the more likely you are to actually use it regularly.
That's key, making it your own tool. Now, you might be wondering, okay, what kinds of movies are actually best to start with?
Good question.
While you can certainly learn from pretty much any film, some genres or types can be particularly helpful, especially when you're just beginning this journey.
Right. So for those who are maybe newer to learning English or perhaps find listening a bit challenging still,
Hmm?
animated movies are often a fantastic choice.
Why is that?
Well, the language used tends to be a bit simpler, generally. The pronunciation is usually very clear, very articulate, and the stories are often engaging and relatively easy to follow visually.
Makes sense. Like what?
Think of movies like Toy Story, Frozen, Zootopia, loads of great options there.
Okay, good starting point.
Yeah.
And if you're interested in learning more about everyday conversations, like how people really talk to each other,
Yeah?
then romantic comedies and sitcoms can be really valuable resources. They're just packed with realistic dialogue about relationships, common expressions of feelings, everyday small talk, that kind of thing.
Right, the stuff you use day to day.
Exactly. Shows like Friends or maybe the US version often has particularly clear dialogue. Or movies like Crazy Rich Asians can be excellent for picking up that natural conversational flow.
Okay. And what if you're feeling a bit more confident in your English skills? Maybe you're ready for more of a challenge.
Well, then superhero and action movies can offer a fun challenge. They
Yeah.
often have more complex storylines, maybe faster dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
They expose you to a wider range of emotions being expressed, sometimes quite dramatically. And you might even pick up some more specialized vocabulary related to those genres, sci-fi terms, action verbs.
Got it. Like which ones?
Oh, movies like Black Panther, the Avengers franchise, or even something like the Harry Potter series could be good options to stretch yourself a bit.
Great suggestions. And, to make your movie watching even more interactive and maybe even more beneficial, why not turn it into a bit of a game?
Ooh, gamification. I like it. What kind of games?
Well, one simple idea is to play a guess the meaning game.
Mm-hmm.
When you encounter a word or phrase you don't understand,
Mm-hmm.
pause the movie and try to guess its meaning just from the context, the scene, the actors, what just happened before you check the subtitles or look it up in a dictionary or your notebook.
Oh, that's good. It really encourages you to think actively about the language, doesn't it? Not just passively receive it.
Exactly. Another engaging activity, maybe a bit bolder,
Mm.
is to try acting like the characters.
Okay, stepping into the role.
Yeah. Mimic their voice, their facial expressions, even their little mannerisms. Imagine trying to deliver a funny line from a comedy with the exact same timing and expression as the actor.
It sounds fun. And it's probably a great way to get more comfortable using different tones and inflections when you speak English yourself. Less monotonous.
Definitely. And finally, a nice wrap-up activity.
Mm-hmm.
After you've watched a movie, try writing a short review of it. In English, of course.
Ah, putting it into practice.
Right. Just jot down maybe what the movie was about in a sentence or two, what you enjoyed, and perhaps 2 or 3 new things, words, phrases, ways of saying something that you learned from the language used in it.
That's a great way to consolidate. For example, after watching a Disney movie, you might note down a new expression you picked up, or maybe a specific way a character describes something that you found interesting.
Exactly. Okay, so just to recap quickly then. Remember that movies provide real, everyday conversations, which is often quite different from textbook material.
Mm-hmm. You're hearing those contractions, the slang, language just filled with real emotion, exactly like people speak in the real world. Think back to even a simple greeting in a movie. It's often so much more natural than a formal, hello, how are you?
So true. And don't forget the incredible power of the visuals in movies.
Yeah.
That context is huge.
Absolutely. When you see an action happening on screen as a character describes it, like someone saying, he ran quickly while you actually see them sprinting,
Yeah.
it reinforces the meaning in a very effective, almost subconscious way.
And perhaps most importantly, keep in mind that learning should ideally be enjoyable.
Yes. Crucial
Right.
point.
When you're having fun, like watching a movie you genuinely love, your brain is just more engaged, more switched on, and that leads to more effective and, importantly, more lasting learning.
Makes total sense. So we shared those 3 key tips to guide you. First, think about starting by watching movies in English with English subtitles.
Right. Connect the sound and text.
Connect the sound and text, see how words look and sound, then challenge yourself by turning them off later. Remember how seeing a slang word on screen can help you understand its meaning in context?
Yeah.
And definitely try to avoid those native language subtitles if you can to stay fully immersed in the English.
Good reminder. Second, practice shadowing repeating lines from the movie right after you hear them.
Mimic the actors.
Even just a few minutes of this each day, trying to match the actor's pronunciation and intonation, that rhythm. It can really, really improve your speaking skills over time.
And third, keep that dedicated movie English notebook. Make it your own.
Your personal dictionary. Jot down new vocabulary and phrases, their meanings, make up your own example sentences, and note the movie context where you found them. It becomes your personal collection of English discoveries.
And remember those suggestions for starting points. Consider animated films for their clear language,
Yep.
romantic comedies and sitcoms for everyday conversations,
Mm-hmm.
and then maybe progressing to other genres like action or fantasy as your confidence grows.
And don't forget to make it fun. Try those games like guessing word meanings from context, acting like the characters, or writing those mini reviews in English after you watch.
So as you begin this really exciting way of learning English through movies, just remember that you are now in control of your own learning experience. You're the director.
I like that.
By actively engaging with films, you really can improve your listening comprehension, speak more confidently, and expand your vocabulary in a way that's both super effective and, let's be honest, pretty enjoyable.
Definitely. Okay, so here's a final thought for you to maybe consider as you go off and choose your next movie.
Ooh. Okay.
Think about how gaining a deeper understanding of the specific language used in your absolute favorite movies might actually unlock new layers of meaning, maybe cultural context that you hadn't quite noticed before.
That's interesting. Like what?
Well, what subtle jokes or perhaps cultural references might you now be able to appreciate that maybe went over your head before? It's potentially a fantastic way to connect with the film and the culture behind it on a whole new level.
That's a great point. Gives you another reason to rewatch your favorites.
Exactly. Go find those hidden layers.